Hi and welcome to INTERGEO TV, the official broadcast channel and podcast, where we discuss future-oriented topics and reflect INTERGEO's motto, inspiration for a smarter world in all its facets. Join INTERGEO TV and dive into expert interviews about the future of geoinformation, geodesy and land management. Today we'll explore the use of satellite and geospatial data in humanitarian crises and natural disasters. Our guest today is Anne Schneibel. Anne studied environmental sciences and received her PhD in remote sensing from Trier University in 2018. Since then, her research has focused on the use of remote sensing to support humanitarian aid and the assessment of human livelihoods. Since 2020, she's a research associate at the German Remote Sensing Data Center at the German Aerospace Center. In this role, she coordinates research projects focusing on the use of satellite and geospatial data in humanitarian crises and natural disasters, and how best to disseminate information to users. So welcome here to INTERGEO TV, Dr. Anne Schneibel. Hi, Anne.
Hi, thank you for the introduction.
Well, let's dive into the interview. In early June 2024, several flooding affected southern Germany. How are you feeling after several weeks of supporting the authorities and aid organizations in coping with the floods in Bavaria and Baden-Württemberg?
Yeah, that's a good question, because right after the disaster, or let's say with the onset of the disaster, you are more in a functional mode. So we do have some mechanisms that we are also well trained for. And as soon as the disaster starts, we just get into functional mode. So we drop the pen and everything is only focused on the disaster. And now with 2 weeks after the disaster, we are more in a recap mode. So we try to have a more distant look on what went good, what went smooth, where do we need to be better prepared for the next time. So also the adrenaline level of the researchers, of course, goes down, but the most crucial days are really the days with the onset of the disaster. And that is where you're very tense and very just focused on the crisis itself.
So what exactly does your institute do in the event of disasters as just described?
Yeah, so I'm part of the Center for Satellite-Based Crisis Information, and we are a team at the German Aerospace Center that deals with crisis response and with the provision of disaster information in case of natural disasters, but also in conflict or other crises. And we do have a long-term experience with that. We have our 20 years anniversary this year. And so what we do is basically we provide information products, whatever they might look like. We started originally with maps. You can also see the map behind me. So we provide that to humanitarian organizations, but also to public authorities to better respond to a crisis. And having said that, there are already very good disaster platforms out there, like the Chart of Space and Major Disasters or the Copernicus Emergency Mapping Service. So we are not trying to double their work, but ZKI gets activated when we have feeling that DLR technology or our know-how can still contribute to a crisis, because it might be as devastating or it might be very close to where we are here in Germany. And that is where we steal our technology, and that is the advantage of having a big research institute behind our back that can support us, and we can use all the technology or the methodology to respond to a crisis.
You just mentioned also the maps which are behind you. So what is the most important aspect of emergency mapping?
It's time. It's always being, to bring out information products in a timely manner. So we really talk about hours in this case. And in the best case, we are already aware of a crisis happening in the next hours. And that was a bit the case with the recent flood in southern Germany, because we were already aware that water levels are rising, the embankments might not be stable enough. So we were aware that something might happen. We were not aware of the extent, of course. But having information available as quickly as possible, whether it's from satellites, from aerial, like from drones or from planes or helicopter, or also from simple other sources like what I just mentioned, water levels and so on. That is information that is very crucial to have available within the first hours after the disaster happens, especially when you think of other countries. Now, Germany is very well connected when it comes to disaster response, but in other countries that might not be the case, and they might also be quite remote. So having information on remotely or not accessible areas available is just as important.
So you work hand in hand with authorities and aid organizations, and you just mentioned time matters, and it worked well in Germany, especially in the case of the south of Germany. But how well rehearsed are the processes when you work with the organizations, the officials?
Yeah, that is a difficult question because you can never rehearse that one disaster because no disaster resembles another. But we try to tackle this problem with two different aspects. And the one aspect is to really cultivate a network to the important actors in case of a crisis. So just mentioned the authorities, but also the organizations. That means that the actual work takes place between disasters. So we need to nurture the network. We need to get in touch with the actors. We need to know who is responsible in what case of a crisis. So we have different actors in Germany, of course, than we might have in, let's say, Pakistan or Indonesia. And to know who is responsible in case of a crisis is already the biggest information for us. And that is something that we do in between crises. And the other aspect is that we also have research projects where we do develop new methodologies, new technology, but also new mechanisms that might come into place in case of a disaster. And that is where we incorporate humanitarian organizations. So we never do it without a user. And within these research projects, we also have demonstrations where we use real case scenarios where we, for example, simulate a flood or another disaster. And then under these real case scenarios, we test the mechanisms. How do they work best? What are the best ways of communication, of dissemination, to be then prepared in case another disaster happens?
So the last disaster, the flood, is not a long time ago. You just mentioned it's time to recap right now. So what did you learn from your mission concerning the flooding in Bavaria and Baden-Württemberg?
So what we always, the thing is, even after 20 years of ZKI, we still learn something new with every crisis. And that is probably the experience that you take with you when you work at ZKI. So every crisis is different, and what you always learn is flexibility. You need to be flexible because in some crises you can work with satellite data, what you can't in others. So the case of the floods in Germany this year, also the Ahrtal flood, showed us that we might have the nicest satellites in the orbit, but in such a crisis we need to rely on other systems, and that was aerial imagery. So being flexible is always what we need to learn with every crisis. And I also already mentioned that timeliness matters, but timeliness also differs. So in the case of the Ahrtal flood, we had to really rush with our information products because we were also quite surprised by the flood. In the case of Bavaria, it was a little bit different because we could already anticipate that something was happening. And so we could be better prepared. We could have a look at different villages and where might the water levels exceed the normal level, where might the first aid responders go next, where do they need the next information products. That is one aspect that we learned, and what we also learned again is how to provide the information. So we do, of course, still work with the maps. They are very important because in many cases you don't have internet connection, so people still rely on printed maps to take out with them in the field and to draw on them and to plan their operations. But what we also do by now is to provide all the information via web viewers, so interactively, that this is more than for decision makers, so that they can view different layers, they can switch them on and off, they can only use the layers they're interested in. And this time we really provided a big information system where they could see the flood extent, where they could see the aerial imagery, but they could also switch on other information like where are settlements, where are roads, and so on. So with every disaster, we learn something new.
Let's regard the position of geoinformation or geospatial data in that context. And climate change makes it likely that disasters like floods, heavy rainfalls, and forest fires will become more frequent. So how does the international geo community, when we talk about INTERGEO and the participants and the experts meeting and gathering all there, how do the geo community positioning itself in this regard?
Yeah, it's true. So we do expect disasters to happen more frequently and to also be larger, whether it's natural disasters, but also other crises like conflicts. What plays into our hands in this regard is that also methodologies and technology develops very fast at the moment. So we do have very many satellites available in the orbit that we could use in such a case, and the number is not decreasing, so it's rather increasing. So we will have much more data available in the future. And in addition, we also have the methodology to analyze this data, whether it's with artificial intelligence, which we already use, for example, to very quickly estimate the number of destroyed houses or damaged roads that we can then provide to the humanitarian organizations. Or it's also big data processing. So nowadays we can really observe globally where is a flood happening, how large is the extent, how many people will be affected. And our task at ZKI is then to break all this technology down to make it usable for the end user, because they have to make a decision in the end based on the nice technology and all the good methodology that we have nowadays. But in the end, the work for them stays the same. They need to save lives. And our task is then to break it down to really meaningful information products.
Thank you very much. This was Dr. Anne Schneibel. She is from the Center for Satellite-Based Crisis Information, ZKI. This is a service of the German Remote Sensing Data Center at the German Aerospace Center. Thank you very much for your time and joining us here at this INTERGEO TV expert interview.
Thank you.
And if you want to learn more about these topics and get more insights and information, you can get that at INTERGEO 2024, which will take place from the 24th to the 26th of September this year at the Fairgrounds of Stuttgart, Germany. Or you can also join the INTERGEO community all year long on intergeo.de, on LinkedIn or Instagram or Facebook. Thank you.